Hi, I'm Brian Hoyland. I go by T.S. Dismas for my pseudonym, and this is The Psychology of Heaven. And I want to introduce a very good friend of mine. This is a therapist who I've worked with in the past, and I don't want to say too much about her. I'll let her introduce herself just because of where she works and security reasons. I'm going to let her explain her story, and I don't want to step on any areas that I shouldn't. But this is my friend April. She's a therapist, and here you are. And I'd like to thank you for coming and tell us your story.
Well, thanks, Brian. Towards the end, I was just so bad that I was like habitually using. I would drink, take pills, whatever pills I had. I was smoking marijuana, experimenting with other stuff, but it was to the point where I was on a daily basis. I would get up in the morning and I would have a glass of usually vodka, chilled, and a glass of milk. And I would slam the vodka straight, and then I would slam the milk. And if I threw up, it didn't hurt as bad coming up. And it was so bad that I was vomiting blood.
Oh.
And it didn't stop me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
April, I was wondering, you had said that, it pulled you further away from God. And,
yep.
and, even the fact that these things weren't stopping you, seriously seeing blood as you're throwing up, right? That wasn't even stopping you. And did you feel unloved by God?
I didn't feel unloved by God. I felt unworthy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I didn't, and I knew that God would always accept me and love me. And I played a huge game with my life and my soul.
Mm-hmm.
I used to barter with God all the time. I was using so much that I had to hide it because there was that much of a concern at that point. And when I got sober, it was really crazy how much stuff was being found all over my house. There's this thing where I had this unresolved issues that I had not worked through. And the mental health stuff, obviously that's, exasperated by that, but it's two separate things.
Okay. Yeah.
That I know I have to work with.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I have to deal with every day, and to know that I'm okay being unokay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be okay sometimes.
Right.
And accepting that and really understanding that it's two different things.
Absolutely.
So I had gotten to the point where I no longer could deal with it. At that particular moment in my life when I finally got to what people would call their rock bottom, mm-hmm. I was at a really, really low point in my life, and I didn't really see myself coming out of that. And I got home from work, so it was really late. It was probably 3, 4 in the morning. We had gotten home from work, got into an argument on the way home. Some words were said that really upset me, and it drew me back to all of that pain from childhood. And when you're drunk out of your mind and whatever else I was doing, it was just consuming.
Yeah.
So they thought that I was just wasted. And so they were trying to walk me around the house while they were waiting for the ambulance to get here.
Yeah.
But they were more or less dragging me around. It didn't work.
Right.
So the ambulance got here, and by then I was, they call it flatlining. And they had to continuously resuscitate me. And a helicopter landed about a block away from our house to pick me up, but they couldn't take me from the ambulance to the helicopter until they could get my vitals up. And so that, I guess, took a while. And then they took me up to HCMC, do all kinds of different procedures and stuff like that to even save my life. And then they put me in a medically induced coma. And I think I was in a coma for like 3 or more days. But during this whole time, while this was all going on, I remember hearing the helicopter sound, but I didn't see or anything then. But then when I was at the hospital, it was like I was up in the air looking down at the room. And I could see what was going on and I could hear what people were saying. And I remember just being really calm and at peace. And just overjoyed with knowing that everything was okay now. And when I did finally wake up, I explained all of this to my mom, and she verified that actually a lot of those conversations really took place.
Yeah.
And it was just an absolutely amazing experience. I can't even explain it, because when I woke up, I was a changed person.
Yeah.
I was a new person, and I was ready to live. Of course, I still had a lot of stuff to work through, but I was okay with that.
Yeah.
And it was fine. After getting out of the hospital, I went to treatment, and I did do AA for a while. I went to NA a little bit, but mostly a lot of my work was through my faith. I had a pastor that he was also a counselor, and I met with him literally like once or twice a week.
Oh,
and yeah, it was
He
amazing.
gave you so much.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. And I did therapy. I did all kinds of different things to really heal me in all ways. I really believe that it's important for people to be well holistically. Like, you can't just be well in one area of your life. It has to be your whole person, and your connection with your family and your friends and all of that. It all has to be, cared for. Actually, there were many days where I would just say, God, speak through me, use me as your tool, because I don't have the words, I don't know. And it always went well when I did that. So prayer is very powerful.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the most important things too is how you measure your success. And the way I measure my success is not about whether or not I see results or that I have any sort of expectation from people. My measure of success is mostly just in the connection that I make with people, and in knowing that in some way, shape, or form, even if just for the moment, their lives have been improved.
Yeah. Even if it's just that one,
Yes.
That's what I've noticed. I mean, I know that about you because like we said, we work together. I know that about you. I was able to watch and see. I mean, this isn't something where I got to take your word for it, or even just having worked together. Sometimes you don't know that. I actually got to know firsthand how you are. And that's how you are. You care about, you're like that story, that story where people said that little boy's walking on the beach and he's throwing the starfish in. There's a whole bunch of starfish on the beach. And somebody says to him, hey, what does it matter? It's just going to help that one. And the kid says, well, yeah, but I helped that one. You lived that story. I'm not even kidding. I have never had anybody that I've worked with, not one therapist, that has not been complained about in one way or another. Not malpractice or anything like that. I'm just talking that they just said something that somebody got offended by, or they didn't understand it properly. You reach people in such a clear and concise way that they know you care about them with every interaction. I have never had anybody get upset and say, well, I don't appreciate how April was treating me. I've never had that. I never heard of it. No one that I ever knew of heard of that. I mean, this is how you are. And it's beautiful to hear you saying that, because I think that's what helps people. I think that's why you're so effective at what you do, is you're able to take all of that experience that you have, knowing that, yeah, there's parts of it that are your responsibility. And then there's parts that are other people who have took advantage of a vulnerable situation. But you don't let that deter you from impacting good into other people's lives on a daily basis with every single interaction. And I think that's what is amazing to me, having had my near-death experience, to know somebody that when I came back, I said, well, that's how I want to live. Like, just like April, every day I used to see you, I saw that's how I wanted to live now. I didn't really necessarily think I wanted to live like, one of the hardest things for me about being a Christian was turning the other cheek. I always struggled with that. But you live it out in a way that you don't have to turn the other cheek, because you're always treating people with such respect. And even if you do have to turn the other cheek, it doesn't seem to faze you. It doesn't seem to bother you to swallow your pride so that somebody else isn't hurt more by whatever situation they're dealing with. And to me, that's beautiful. That's how I want to live my life now.
Well, thank you. A lot of kind words.
You deserve them.
That's interesting that you say that, because Mother Teresa, when I converted to Catholicism, my husband is Catholic, and after we got married, he started to become an active member of the church. And I can practice my Christian faith wherever I go.
Yeah.
And to me, it's more important to keep the family together. So I converted to Catholicism, and my patron saint that I chose was Mother Teresa, because of her desire to share her love in small ways and to be a servant to people that are what society outcasts and sees as the lowest of the low. Because you know what? They are beautiful and they are wonderful. And why aren't we treating them like they're equal or just as important as anybody else?
Right.
And so for me, I am really in my element when I work with people that need that, that feel a sense of need for someone just to care about them, as a human being on a basic human dignity level. Yeah. And when I started working at the facility, I got involved in restorative justice. And I really started to understand how the person that causes the harm usually has been very traumatized and harmed themselves. And I had the pleasure of going to this training with Minnesota Peace Builders, and it's called STAR training. It's all about trauma awareness and resilience. And we joked around because it was such a beautiful training. It was actually quite a healing for everyone that was there. And it was a week long. It was 40 hours. It was amazing. And one of the very first things that they taught us is that hurt people, and hurt people help people. And so that is so true. And when you get to the point where you start realizing that the people that are causing the most harm in the world, they can also turn that over and become the people that cause the most help and are the helpers and the ones that produce real change in the world, because they have that passion.
That is so right. You're so right. One of the things that just made me think about is like when I was in heaven and God was healing me, that was like all those wounds that I had, trying to bury them in it. And so I think that's what you bring up is such, you always do, but you bring up this really deep look at how humanity how humanity is on a continuum, and we do go back and forth in these hurts and then have good times, but it's often we stay in those hurts, and it's because we don't even know how to get out of them.
Mm-hmm. It's very true. I want to go back to, I just was thinking of about a year after I had gotten sober, I had this other experience that was very significant in my journey as a Christian and in my recovery. At the time, they had taken me off all of my medications for sleep and for anxiety and things like that. And I didn't sleep for about 2 weeks straight. And I was literally from head to toe in intense pain. And I couldn't sleep. I was miserable. I was literally just absolutely, completely consumed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And on that last night, I stayed up all night and I prayed over and over and over again the same prayer. God, this is yours to carry. I can't do it. I have to give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
This is your cross to bear. I can't take it. It's too much.
Yeah.
And I did that over and over and over again. And I think God wanted me to really realize that, one, I was never in control. Two, he's the salvation, not me. I don't need to solve everything. I don't need to have all the answers. I don't need to be perfect. I don't need any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's fine as long as you put your faith and your strength in God. And that's when I realized that there's strength and weakness, because I know I'm a weak person. I know that in many ways that I am very flawed, and I am super okay with being flawed now. I don't care.
Right.
I don't care what people think about me. If they think that I'm flawed, then yes, I am.
I'm the first one to admit it, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
Me too. I get what you're saying.
But it's that strength and weakness, and only the strength comes from God. And knowing that your strength is God.
Right.
And I had also made it a mission for my life. When I got into recovery and sobriety, my mission and my goal in life is to learn what is love and how can I emulate that in my life. And love is patient, love is kind, all of that. I am not good at doing that with my family as much as I am with everyone else. And so I am always working on it, and it's a never-ending goal to get there.
Yeah.
We are all human. None of us, I don't care who you are and how perfect you are or how deep your relationship is with God, you're flawed.
Mm-hmm.
You will be flawed, and you're going to have that thorn in your side. God wants it there. He allows us to have that, because if we didn't have it, we would think that we had it all figured out. We would start believing that we're the ones in control, and we're not in any way in control. God has a plan for our lives, and we all have purpose and we all have value. And if we can just start to really understand that and to embrace it, that's when that sense of peace comes. I remember hearing about like the promises come true and how elusive it was to me. Like, what on earth is the promises, and how does that come true? And when am I going to experience that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember thinking that, in my naive state of just learning about what is recovery and the 12 steps and all of that journey, it all seems so beyond, and it's really so simple. And that's why, like, even with the 12 steps, people make it so difficult, and it's not.
Right.
It's really just understanding I am out of control. I don't have control of my life. God has control. Well,
yeah.
I tell them a higher power. There is a sense of purpose and control in an answer to these things in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And starting to embrace that in your life, and accept the fact that you're not the one in control.
Yeah.
And then I call it sweeping up the garbage, taking your personal inventory.
Yeah.
And when I tell people to take their inventory, I say take an inventory as complete as you can, and that includes both good and bad.
Yeah.
You're not all bad.
That's right.
And when people do their like fourth and fifth step, a lot of times they only focus on what's bad and what they've done bad. They don't talk about the hurt they've experienced. They don't talk about what's good about them. And I think that taking a fuller look at it, and I actually don't believe that that's a one-time thing. That's an ongoing thing, which we get later in the steps. So then you have to share that with God and another person, let it go, really share it. And that in itself is, I understand why it's another step, because you really have to do that in order to fully express it. And to get that insight from other people where you're stuck in your own head about things, and there's other perspectives and other views of it.
Yeah.
And other truths that you need to hear.
Yeah.
And then you got to prepare yourself and make yourself ready to let go of the garbage, So you get the garbage picked up in the house, you sweep it up, you put it in the garbage bag, you take it out to the garbage man on the side of the road, and you let them take it away, right?
That's right.
That's kind of what it is. It's simple.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be more difficult than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have to decide, I don't want to make garbage anymore.
Right.
I'm going to stop making this garbage. Well, inevitably, you're going to make some garbage. But you're going to do the best you can not to, right? Stop being so messy.
Well, and you really hit such a good point about taking that inventory of the good too, because while we do have to take the garbage out, let's just be realistic. There's certain things in our lives we don't want. Let's get rid of that. That's okay. But part of that garbage we kept because that was dinner and it was beautiful and it filled us, it nourished us, So we got to consume that part and enjoy that. But we also want to recreate that. We want to have that again and again and again in our lives, because that's what's going to keep us alive and keep us happy. Those
Absolutely.
are things we need to focus on. Yes, exactly. We have to focus on those things and not the garbage. If we leave the garbage in the house, then we're going to focus on the garbage. Let's take it out. I love it.
Let it go.
That's right. That's a beautiful analogy.
Stop being a hoarder of garbage.
Exactly. Yeah. Hoarding's not a good thing. I mean, in fact, I think you could help a lot of people with some hoarding. So
I think I need help myself with that area.
Sometimes society builds that into people. I think that really is that's more of a societal issue. I think but that's a whole nother show, I think.
Yep. And then it's you get further in the steps and you're seeking support in your journey, and you're sharing what you've gotten. You have to daily take your inventory and keep your house clean and focus on the good and the well and everything. When I tell people to take a daily inventory, they look at me like I'm crazy. Like, I'm not going to do that. But it's really simple. It's like, what if they tell you not to go to bed angry. Well, what about not going to bed feeling like crap about yourself?
Absolutely.
Because you damage your soul when you don't do the things that you know are right. That little voice in your head is there for a reason. That voice is God telling you right from wrong. And he's telling you because he cares about you and he doesn't want to see you hurt.
That's right.
And he doesn't want to see you hurt others. And so I know a lot of times people talk about the devil and the angel on your shoulders telling you which way to go. And it's a real thing. People know that it's true. They joke about it. And the truth is that when you don't listen to the good voice in your head, you suffer.
Yeah.
And if you go to bed with it, it carries over into the next day and it grows.
That's one of the best things I've done is I've added an examination of conscience at night before I go to sleep. I review the things throughout the day that I've done that I'm not happy with, because I don't want to do them anymore. So if I don't acknowledge them, then I'm just going to go to sleep on it. And that creates this acceptance in me. And I don't want that. I don't want to be having this negative thing that I'm just somehow learning to ignore. I don't want to do that. I want to address it and say, look, that's not what I want to do. I said this horrible thing. I'm not going to say that again tomorrow. So I'm going to deal with it now. It's beautiful. Yep. It's the fact that as human beings, we sometimes get so fragile, and we want to build ourselves up to be this wonderful thing that's always perfect, and we're not. I make mistakes, and like you said earlier, fine, you want to call me a horrible name. I might agree with you. I do bad things. I'm a flawed human being, but it's not going to hurt my feelings, because I already know that about myself, because I'm looking at the negative things I do. But I'm also a realist, and I look at the positive things, and those are the things I want to keep following through on.
Mm-hmm. And the truth is that we can have that mindset, and there are times when we can be pulled down, maybe because we're triggered by something that brings us back to some old trauma or some old garbage that we dealt with and we've worked through, but it can resurface at times. And I believe in being gentle with yourself through the process and allowing yourself to experience the things, because if it's brought up again for whatever reason, there is a reason that it was brought up, and you need to work through it, and it's okay. And sometimes things don't go away. And I remember one time I was working on really learning how to meditate.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I learned was accepting what you're experiencing for what it is and not fighting it. Like, if you're trying to really focus on positive energy and not thinking about all kinds of random things, but just focusing on the positive energy or whatever specific topic or whatever you're trying to focus on, and your mind is constantly scattering all over, they say just acknowledge it, accept it, thank it for being there, and then let it be. Release it. And I actually took that and translated that into my life, and started going, okay, so, and this is the piece where we start going, sometimes we are going to experience things or witness things or hear of things, especially right now with what's going on. The society is just absolutely going through all kinds of things.
Right.
And one of the most important things is being okay with not being okay.
Yeah.
And just saying, I'm going to give this to God. It's his cross to carry. I can't do it.
Yeah. It's trust.
I have to give it to you, and I have to let you and trust you that you have a plan for my life and for those that are your children.
Mm-hmm.
You have a plan. Mm-hmm. And it's really important, because when we get to that point, we're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I dare to say the devil's waiting for a moment to catch you off guard.
Yeah.
Nap you.
Like a roaring lion, I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he knows all of our triggers, and he feeds on it.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to pull us in at times. He will.
Yeah.
And
He's
we
smarter
have to
than me.
Yep. And it's okay. It's okay, because I really believe, and this is what I tell people, the absolutely worst things that I've been through in my life are also the best things that I've been through my life, because it's made me who I am. It's developed me into who I am today. And if I didn't experience those things, I wouldn't be who I am.
And you know what's so funny?
Share it.
People don't understand that when you say that. But for me, knowing you, I completely, if I would have heard your story without knowing who you are, I'd be like, wow, that's so horrible. How did you do this? How is this even possible? It's even more baffling, probably, knowing what I do know about you, and that you actually live what you're saying, except for it makes it be like, well, okay, I get everything you're telling me right now is true. That is how you do it. This is the answer right here. What you're giving people is actually the answer, and how to live their lives. And we do have bad things that are going to happen. That's called nature. It's not like the lion hates the gazelle. The lion loves the gazelle. It just wants to eat it. It's unfortunate for the gazelle, though, right? But all the lions are happy about it. We have to look at our lives and say, yeah, nature has some bad things. If somebody gets into a car accident, that's not God that causes that. But we reject the one thing that's there to help us. And that just seems like part of us as human beings. We seem so disconnected. But when I see you're living your life and you're just giving the keys on how to do this. All people have to do is really actually do the very steps you're saying. They do work.
Yeah, they do. And I also, firmly believe, because I think that we talk a lot about acceptance and how important acceptance is. And I say, even with my worst things in life, not only will I accept them, but I'm thankful for them.
Yeah.
I have to be thankful for them. Now, I'm not saying when I'm in the midst of something absolutely horrible, I'm going, oh, this is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
No,
right. Then we don't.
But there's a reason that we experience things. They're there for a purpose. And if you believe that God is not there to harm you, but to nurture you and to feed you and to give you a future, then you have to also understand that those things are there to develop you. It's like you have a foundation. If your life is like a house, your foundation is your character. It's who you are and what you believe and what you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do actually implement a lot of that stuff in what I do at work, because there's two things. One is the building character program I've worked on for a long time to get it approved. Now it's approved, but we have COVID, so we haven't been able to do much with it. But character is the foundation. And then the other thing is I have Chuck Berry coming down from Salvation Army with me, and we co-facilitate teaching. We call it effectiveness skills, but it's primarily based on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and what the foundations of that is. And really in developing your character and your core as a person and who you are, and then realizing that you need other people and connecting with other people in a very real way, where you don't just accept people for who they are, but you appreciate the differences, and you cherish the differences, because that's what makes the richness of the development of your relationships.
Yeah.
And it's like also like when you work together, you can be stronger together than you can on your own doing the same tasks. So it's like you put it together, and together 1 + 1 isn't 2, it's 10 or 20 or 100. You can exponentially be stronger together.
Right.
But you can't do that until you are strong on your own and able to be really a good character and foundation yourself.
Right.
And otherwise it comes out as codependency and unhealthy relationships and not effective.
No, right. In the military, they taught us how to, we had to put our gas mask on before anybody else. You can't help somebody else, because if you do it, you're going to probably both die in the process. You have to get yours on, then you're safe. You can help somebody else.
Yep.
Same thing in problems with life. I mean, if you're not in a healthy place and you try to go out and help somebody who's struggling with drugs or alcohol or any number of other issues that they might be struggling with, the likelihood is you might fall into that very same trap, because those are natural to human beings. Those kinds of things that people desire, we all have the same kind of interests, and we can be tweaked in certain ways. And we can't think we're better than somebody else, and that somehow, well, I don't have that issue, I'm not gonna have to worry about it. we got to make sure we're better on a lot of levels. And that really comes down to being better with God, because when we're better with God, we can endure those hardships. We can endure those hard times in life. And, I had to have a heart transplant. I can endure that. That's not hard. I didn't want to do it. Like you had said, we don't like it in that moment. But after that, we can look back and see, wow, in hindsight, this really helped me to grow in so many ways that I would never have expected in that moment when I was feeling that excruciating pain or stress or whatever of the situation. And so that's just how life goes, isn't it?
Exactly. And what a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So, what about, like, one of the things that I know that, me and you were talking earlier, I really like about how you bring things in without, bringing in your faith necessarily, but you bring in just that oneness, that me and you are here together in this moment. We're trying to help you with this problem. But one of the things I've always liked about you, and you've done it in other ways, you hold yourself to the same level as the people you work with. And so, like, if you give them a challenge, you accept the challenge too. And it's even maybe harder for you because you have full access to these things where they're fairly limited. So it's much easier when you're already in a state of denial, because forced denial, but you have no denials that are forced upon you. And yet you hold yourself to that same level just to show them, just in solidarity, support. That's a real thing. I think that I love about Christians but people in general who have love in their hearts, when they try to support each other, I mean, amazing things can happen. And that's something that you implement in your work.
Yeah. I really have a strong belief that if you're going to ask somebody to do something, you should be willing to do it yourself, or at least try to do it yourself. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But sometimes when I challenge clients and things like that, it'll be like, we're going to do this challenge together. Let's try this. I'll do it and you do it, and then we'll check in and see how it goes. It could be anything from like a weekly goals thing, learning about SMART goals, and then coming up with 3 goals and ways to measure it, and then reviewing it at the end of the week to see how effective it was, and really relishing in the successes of it and identifying what do I need to focus on or work on. Well, I will also fill out a sheet, and they'll fill out a sheet, and we'll work on it together. And you know what? I'll be honest with them, like, hey, dude, I actually forgot a couple days. And I'm like, this is hard to remember to do.
Yes, it is.
And we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about how it really is kind of cool, though, because you can measure it and you can look at like how well you're doing it or not doing it. And like recently, like, I noticed that a lot of the guys that I'm working with, because of COVID and everything going on, their programming being shut down, and how hard it is for them to just be cooped up and watching TV all the time. And some of them, they spend way too much time watching the news and things like that, and it's all doomsday. And I realized I do that too. And I was like, you know what? I'll take the challenge, you take the challenge, and in 2 weeks we'll check in and we'll see how we're feeling. Maybe this, like, will feel better because we're not consumed by all the bad things in the world that are going on.
Yeah. How far are you into that?
That started on Thursday.
Okay, that's right.
So far, so good.
That's going to be an incredible. It's almost too bad we don't have the results of that right now, because I think that's a real issue for a lot of people in society. I mean, you can't. I don't even care what side you're on. You cannot tell me your channel that you watch doesn't try to play into your emotions. We should all be able to admit that. If you like Fox News, you're gonna feel emotions about the other side, and if you like CNN, you're gonna feel emotions about that. They manipulate the heck out of us. It's crazy what they're doing, and I think you're right. People are gonna feel better if they turn off the news for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think also part of big thing right now is that how polarized things are. And sometimes it's good just to take a little bit more of a middle ground approach, even in the way that we approach things ourselves, because when I do things, I'm really easily like extreme one way or another. It's like all or nothing. That's, for me, that's the addictive mind.
Yeah.
And I can see that really happening in society right now and how polarized it is. And it's really just cutting a wedge between people instead of bringing people together. It's causing harm. But there's some good that's coming from it too, because maybe some social change that needs to happen is occurring, and sometimes change isn't pretty.
Right.
And once the change occurs, then maybe it'll draw us together closer than we ever were before. Who knows?
Let's hope.
We don't know. We don't know how this is all going to play out.
Right, we don't know.
And it's really easy to go to that doomsday thing and say, like, well, this is the end, but we don't need to worry or predict that. We just need to worry about what we're doing and how we're loving people today, and what we're focused on people. So for me, I can see both sides I'm very open about different sides on things, and I also know my faith, and I keep that as my core.
Yeah.
And what I do is right and wrong. I don't try to impose that on anyone. It's my faith, my beliefs. But if somebody wants to know what it is, I'm going to tell them.
Yeah. What I find really interesting is all these years of me knowing you, I didn't know you were Catholic. I happen to be Catholic too, but I never even knew you were Catholic.
But I've only been Catholic for, I believe, 5 years.
Okay. But the thing I do know about you is you have a beautiful soul. When I was in heaven, I talk about this as like my soul was being shaved down, like all the ugly pieces of me, just because I felt that love and felt that joy. And that's really, and this is, I know this is a huge compliment because I'm intending it to be so, but that's how I see you. Never once was there any time that you ever made me feel any kind of negative emotion. Every time I saw you or talked to you, or anybody who had recently saw you or talked to you, there was positivity that came from them. And that's how I feel about you. You are the person who I know when you're particularly where you work, you're a shining beacon because of the way you live your life. You just care about people. And that's a hard thing, I think, for people to do when we get attached to things of this world, where we're overly attached. We're attached in a bad way, where if it's taken from us, our whole world's upset. That's the kind of negativity I'm talking about. People who are stuck with something, and it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing maybe to hold on to something, our kids, our loved ones, but to hold on to them to the point where we don't have that realistic control. It's like you had said before, we don't have control over everything in our lives. And, life in general dictates how long we get to hold on to people. But that negativity, we can't allow it to, when we have hurt or sadness of any type, we can't allow that to spread to everyone else. Why would we want to wish that on our neighbors and just create more of that in the world? When the reality is that when we deal with it, we can process it, we can have healing, and then we can start to do good things. Because all the things that have happened to you in your life, and here you are, one of the most positive people. I've known a couple people that are really positive. You're in that list. How is it possible that somebody who had all those things happen is that positive? And I'm blown away by your story, just because of how you live your life.
Well, thank you.
Well, I guess I could think of one that big of a. Huh? What's that?
I said I don't give the credit to me, though. It's God that's given this all to me, so the glory goes to Him for sure.
Absolutely, but you hold on.
Did I mention about the patron saint that I chose was Mother Teresa? I don't know if did I mention that in this conversation, or was it prior conversation? I can't recall. But anyway, Mother Teresa is absolutely like one of the most amazing people that's ever lived, just for the fact that she loves, like for her, that her expression of her love was just
to do.
simply to care about other people and to try and meet their needs and to serve people that society has outcast and
Yeah,
considered the lowest of the low, and the people that have nothing to offer
right.
in their selves, but their love too.
Yeah,
And
no, I agree, and I remember this story from Mother, and that's why it, it was. I like to hear that was your patron saint. I was like, huh, fits, because Mother Teresa, she was. I read the story, and it was written by a guy who was not of the Christian faith. He was an Indian who wanted to kill her, and he said that he went in there fully intending to beat her to death. And as he went up to punch her, he lifted his hand up, and there she was cleaning the wounds on somebody who had leprosy. And she looked up and he said, I could see God in her. This guy had never converted. This is the coolest thing is, he was a Muslim, but he did not convert after seeing this. But he said he saw God in her, and it moved him so much that all the hatred, all the anger that he had about her being there just went away, and he walked away. And I thought that was amazing, is to hear, and just hear this guy's testament that he saw something that we all see, that it's easy for people who are Catholic to say, yeah, Mother Teresa, she was godly. Yeah, that's wonderful. But to have somebody who didn't believe that she was godly, but to see it in what she was doing,
yeah.
It's that beauty of doing that work, getting in there and doing what, because like God told me, share his love. That's what Mother Teresa did. That's what you do in your work every day. And just from your story here, you're talking about it all the time, is how you've been learning to channel your life to share God's love. And you're exuding that in the way that you live your life.
Yeah. I had mentioned this previously, but the one of the things too that we have to remember is that I love sharing my testimony or talking about God and trying to show God through sharing about him with people, but that's only just a tiny fraction of how we can share God. There's so much more, and it's just by the way we live, it's by the way we treat people, and it's by serving people and caring about them, and really just being present with them, like you said. And I think that that converts more people.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't surprise me that the story that you talked about with Mother Teresa, it's not always about talking about God, because God is, he just is.
Yeah.
And you can experience that just by experiencing it.
Yep. Well, and you're so right, because I didn't know about your faith. I gathered you were a Christian. I always just expected that you were Protestant. I didn't know that you were Catholic, but not that matters. But I kind of knew you were a Christian. I gathered that just from the way that you acted, but that's because that's the frame of reference I'm coming from too. But I knew there was something different in the way that you handled. But you're so right about that work, is that we can convert a lot of people, or at least make them not have a negative impression of what our faith is about, by how we live our lives in every moment. Because I've had a lot of people who, I've held the door open for some people who have yelled at me for it. I'm like, I hold the door open for anybody. I don't care if you're the strong. I mean, if The Rock was walking behind me, I'm going to hold the door open for him. I know he can do it, but I'm still going to do it, because it would be rude if I didn't do it. I would feel horrible, right? It would be just a terrible thing. But I think how we live our lives can be really important, because doing those little things, are good, but not doing certain things can also be good. Not saying a quick word, or even straightening somebody out on something that they're wrong on, just for the sake of me being right. Maybe it's better just to let them find out somewhere else that they were wrong. And,
Yeah.
It's just being, I guess, you can break it down to being nice, but I always try to look at, examples of, well, Jesus is the top. I always look at him and then I say, well, who's kind of following that path? Mother Teresa, obviously, but in my life, you're a real example of somebody who I say that follows that path, because after coming back, you really were a person that every time I saw you like something on Facebook or post something, about your family or whatever, I was like, wow, I remember how she acted. That's how I want to be. It's hard for me sometimes, even now in the moment, to turn the other cheek. It was my biggest problem with Christianity as a young man was, I just didn't like the idea of turning the other cheek. It was hard for me. But to do it now, it's so much different because, nobody's punching me in the face, but, sometimes people are rude to you. But I always look at them, I'm like, well, how do I help that person get to heaven? Maybe it's just me keeping my mouth shut right now will be the best thing. And, and it makes it easier to go away from it. It just kind of rolls off my back then. But there are examples in our lives. If we look for them, people like you, we're going to find them, because there's people out there who are doing good things, and it might not be as often as you do it, but people do it in those moments. And those are the things we got to really pay attention to too, is not just the negatives where people hurt us, because that's going to happen. But there are times that people also do some nice things.
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
I think you see that probably a lot with the people you work with, is that they've been in a place where, they're cast off. And I've always liked those populations. That's just what I like to work with people that most other therapists don't like to work with. That underserved population always appeals to me, because for one, they often don't get the best care because there's people cycling in and out, and sometimes there's just gaps in coverage. But when you get the right people in there, good things can happen, because those are often the people that are so willing to change. They want the change. They're craving it.
Yeah, it's true. They're like a sponge.
Yeah.
Searching for something.
They've been denied it. Yeah, they've been denied it for so long. Before we end, is there anything else that you wanted to add before we go, or anything?
Well, I just really appreciate that you thought of me and invited me to have this conversation. I haven't talked about this in many years, so it was very interesting for me to kind of think back to it all. I hear other people's life stories all the time, but I don't often tell mine.
Oh, yours, yeah. Well, you got an amazing one, and I'm sure. I don't know that it's just me. I'm sure everybody's going to be excited about this, but the fact that I know you personally, that I was able to see how you act, so it makes it so easy for me to accept everything of what you're saying. It's not easy to do these things. It's not, but you can do it. And you give credit to God. I think that's absolutely the thing that people need to focus on, is that we do need to give credit. We have to do a part in it. We have to accept his graces. We have to be able to be open to it. And he will help us, though. And when he does, then great things can happen through us. It's just, we get in our own way. We prevent a lot of good things from happening just because we hold on to a lot of ugliness that we don't need to. That garbage that you were talking about.
Time to let it go.
Time to let the man take it away.
Absolutely. Stay connected to the true vine. That would be my last words.
There we go. I love it. That's awesome. I got that as a tattoo, by the way, on my arm. So
nice.
I'm with you on that philosophy. Well, thank you, April, for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
God bless you.
Well, God bless you too, and your family.
Yep. You take care.